Welcome back to the channel, fellow aviators. In the last episode of our on-air career mode, we rented our very first aircraft, the Bonanza G36. We also left our life as a freelance pilot behind and became an owner-operator. We are now in the advanced mode. So the very first thing is we look down at the bottom, always check out the tips. It lets us know that we have a pending job and we have some unassigned skill points. So we talked about that in the last episode, so let's start there. As we mentioned before, there's 4 different branches, from the bank loans, FBO agreements, passenger license, and the hiring agreement. The very first thing is when we hover over the blue plus symbol, it tells us a general description of what it's going to do. For us, I think we should start with the passenger license. And I know I said we're starting as a cargo company first, but what it's going to do for us is it's going to unlock dangerous jobs, which I think we should take. And now we have 2 skill points remaining. We can either move it over to last minute jobs or hiring agreement. Both the dangerous jobs and the last minute jobs are going to provide extra missions for us to do for extra money. So even though I think the next step is we'd like to hire an AI pilot, I think for now, let's take last minute jobs, and that should maximize the amount of money we receive for any of our missions. So let's come down to the very bottom, click save, and we're now back out to the main dashboard. In the center, we see we have 1 pending job. So let's click there. And we see yet again, we have another gold trophy mission. As I mentioned in the last episode, whenever you see those, take them as they provide the most amount of money and the most amount of experience. So we're going to go ahead and take that job, and I will just meet you back out at the aircraft, as we've seen multiple times now, how to accept a job, how to do our load planning. And in the interest of time, I'll meet you back out at the aircraft with us set up and ready to go. Okay, back with you. We're on runway 19. We've dialed in 8,000 feet for the top of our climb. We've dialed in 100 knots, which is VY on the Bonanza. We have our transponder on. We have synced up our runway heading to our direction of travel, and I think we are just ready to depart. So let's get going. All right, coming up on 75 knots. A little slight back pressure.
Airborne time logged.
Climb to the command bars, positive rate. Gear up. Flaps up. And we're right into IMC. Come down, hit our autopilot on, hit our nav mode. And we are away. And since we are going into IMC, let's go ahead and put our pitot heat on. Right into the rain. Back on our prop just a little bit. Getting a nice good climb right out here, out of sea level, 2,100 feet per minute. Looks great. We are naviging to our next destination, so I think we are looking good. So I just got back off of 3 days of flying. Nothing great. Actually, I was coming in from Tampa, and my landing was super smooth. Like, you couldn't even feel the aircraft touch the ground. And I followed that up by pile driving it on the next landing. So, oh boy, it is hard to get consistency sometimes. I was super mad at myself. I'm en route to San Juan here in another couple days. Picked up a bunch of extra flying down there. Pretty easy flying, just going to be heading from San Juan back to Newark. Going to spend about 30 hours in Manhattan, in Times Square at the W Hotel. My wife's going to come out and join me. I think we're maybe go see a play. Then Saturday, I'm going to head back to San Juan. I'll spend the day in San Juan. And then Sunday, heading to Cleveland. Got about 24 hours in Cleveland. It's cold. It's nasty. I don't think I'm leaving my room. And then back to San Juan. And then I'll return home. So all extra money. So I'm happy about that. So if I didn't mention it before, I think we're going to plan on doing an RNAV approach. So you all can see that relatively simple approach, especially if you've been following along and doing some of the visual approaches with me in the Garmin 1000. It's very easy to transition over to the RNAV approach. So when we get a little closer, I will probably go ahead and... Sorry, I was getting distracted here as I realized I never turned on my landing light. That'll be a ding. As we get a little bit closer, we'll go over how to brief up that approach, how to read an approach plate. I was on a Discord and someone had made a comment that reading an approach plate is comparable to getting a college degree. It's really not when we kind of break it down. And so I want to do that for you guys. And then I'll show you how to get yourself set up so you can fly the RNAV approach. All right, 7,000 climbing 8. One of the calls we obviously make at the airlines I bring along just as well. Unfortunately, it's that time of day where my track IR doesn't seem to work. It's very aggravating. I don't know what it is, but we will improvise, adapt, and overcome. There we go. There's the Marine out of me. All right, coming up on our top of climb here, so I want to make sure we see our green flashing alts, so we know it's picked it up. It should level us off at 8,000. As it does that, since we haven't adjusted our power setting, we'll begin to accelerate, which is perfect. Come over here once again, right click on our heading knob. That'll sync up our heading bug for straight ahead. Okay, so what I think I'll do is, there's not a whole lot to see here since we're going to be in IMC probably most of the way. So what we'll do is I'll rejoin you as we're getting a little bit closer. We'll go over the approach chart. We will get the aircraft set up and configured for the RNAV 3.2 approach. And that is it. All right, so I will see you all, well, I'm going to see you all here in about a second. For me, in another couple minutes. All right. Okay, let's go over the approach chart really quickly. Any approach chart, whether you're using these JEP charts, which are a product of Navigraph, or you're using the onboard Lido, are all going to have the same basic components. And that is going to be the heading, the plan view, the profile view, and our minimums. So starting at the very top, you just want to confirm that we actually have the right approach chart, which will be the RNP runway 32. The tower will be 18.1. We can dial that in early. It's an RNAV approach. Final approach course will be 325. Our final approach fix will be 1,800 feet. And our minimums are on the LNAV, VNAV, or our decision altitude, will be 380 feet. That's the point if we get to 380 feet, if we don't have the runway environment in sight, which would include the landing light system, the runway edge lights, taxiway lights, centerline lights. There's a whole list of things we can go over it if you like. If you don't have those in sight, then you will need to execute the missed approach. The airport elevation is 41 feet. This is important, at least here for the airlines. And I think it's good practice here, is we need to be at a stabilized approach at 1,000 feet above field elevation. And so for us, that means full flaps in. Airspeed is within +10, -5 on vertical guidance, on lateral guidance. There's a whole list of things that we have to have before we get to 1,000 feet. If we don't, for us, it's an automatic go around. I think it's a good procedure here because once we do that, we can have the airplane fully configured. We have our flaps and gears down. And once we kick off the autopilot at our minimums, should be very easy to make the landing. Aircraft should be trimmed out. The next thing over is our MSA, which is centered around the ARP VOR, and it's 2,500 feet. That just lets us know in a quick glance if we got completely disorientated within 25 nautical miles of the airport, 2,500 feet, climb there, and that will give us 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle rounded up. Then we have the missed approach procedure, which is climb on heading to 325, so that straight out to Pampa and hold at 3,000 feet. And from there, we have some notes. For the most part, it's not, you don't have to deal with a lot of the notes, but always wise to check. Then we're looking at the plan view, the overhead view, eagle-eyes view. We see the highest obstacle is 1,345 feet. And it's going to be about 2 miles away from Sugdi intersection where we're coming in from the north. We see that Sugdi is our initial approach fix. It's at 3,000 feet. We're going to go on a heading of 235 for 5 miles to RTAC, which is also 3,000 feet. And then from RTAC, we go into MR 401, which is almost 5 miles, 4.9 miles, and we need to be down at 1,800 feet. So from 3,000 to 1,800 feet at 401, and then from M0401, our final approach fix, it's 5.1 miles to the runway. And then we go up, we see the light blue lines, those are some rivers. The dots, 640, 538, 650, those are obstacles. Going down, we have another profile view to kind of tell us at 5 miles out from the runway threshold, we should be at 1,666 feet. At 4 miles, 1,432, 3 miles, 1097, and at 2 miles, we should be 763 feet. Once again, just another backup to help us know if we are on profile. From there, we look at the profile view, which is RTAC 3000, MR 401, 1800, and beneath there, we see some more information, which is ground speed in knots and final approach fix to the missed approach point in time. So at 70 knots, we should have a descent rate of 390 feet, and it should take us 422. We'll be coming in approximately at 80 knots, so we can interpolate the data. So half between 390 and 502 is roughly, 450, and halfway between 422 and 324, roughly 4 minutes, maybe 3 minutes and 50 seconds, something like that. When we get down there, we should see PAPIs, precision approach indicators, on the left-hand side with an ALSF lighting system. And then right next to that is the missed approach procedure, straight ahead 3,000 feet, heading at 325 to Pampa. And finally beneath that is the LNAV VNAV minimums, or 380 feet, or LNAV 460. And it just matters if the aircraft, which I believe the Garmin 1000, at least in the sim, can do. All right, so that is how you read an approach plate and kind of brief it up. Let's come over here to the camera. Let's get out of there. Let's get rid of that. Let's go to look here. And we see now we are at 3 miles away, or I'm sorry, 3 minutes away from the top of descent, which would require us about an 900 feet per minute rate of descent to get down from 8,000 feet to 3,000 at Sugdi, as we just briefed. So let's come over here. Let's dial in. Let's dial in 3,000 feet. I can actually get on the right thing here using my Bravo throttle quadrant. Makes it a little bit easier if you're dinging over there. All right, so now actually we can dial in 3,000, which would get us to Sugdi. But remember, our final approach fix is 1,800. So we can just dial all the way down to 1,800. We don't have to dial in an intermediate altitude. Let's come back over here. Let's go to procedure. I think we've already activated it. That looks good. Flight plan. Let's go back to here. All right. From here, we want to hit VNAV and approach. Looking back over here, we will see at the very top of our screen, we have selected vertical path, and GP stands for glide path. Those are in white. That lets us know that we have selected them, but they are not armed. All right, so from here, we just now need to wait. One more time in, so about 1 minute and 40 seconds out. So if we get to top of descent, and for you get some bizarre sim situation, maybe you didn't set it up correctly, you forgot to hit VNAV, it doesn't take, whatever the issue is, immediately just go to vertical speed and dial in 900, and that'll get you back on profile for you to make the approach nice and smoothly. But I don't think we should have any issues. Unfortunately, my track, at the time of the day, I think I already mentioned, my track IR just does not seem to work correctly. I don't know why that is. If anyone has any suggestions about track IR, it seems it works fairly good. But once I get towards the afternoon, I don't know if there's some weird reflection I'm getting, but I just start bouncing all over the place. And the last thing I want to do is be on final and be looking backwards at my seat and not be able to get out of it. So we're going to leave that. So come down here, we can look at one more thing. So we see we're at 8,000 feet. We've selected 1,800, that is in the cyan color, and we have 3,000 in magenta. So it's telling us our next altitude that it's going to be going for. And I think we're probably just coming up right now, about 5, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's take a look. Back over to here, and you see we're already starting to descend. So it is working perfectly, and it's going to get us down to 3,000 feet right at Sugdi. Once we get to 3,000, it'll level us off until we get to RTAC. If you remember, that's our next fix, another 5 miles away. So as we descend, obviously without changing power settings, we're going to continue to increase our speed. As I've mentioned before, that's always okay. The question is, when should we get ourselves fully configured? And I think it'll be between Sugdi and RTAC. That will give us 5 miles to slow down, to drop the gear if we need to. Actually, might even be able to wait a little bit. Probably won't drop the gear. We'll probably start slowing down from Sugdi to RTAC. We have 5 miles. We'll start slowing down, and then as we turn inbound from RTAC to the final approach course, before we head down, we'll get our gear down. We just want to arrive around 1,000 feet with everything fully configured. So I'm just going to take the benefit of our acceleration, so this makes this flight quicker. Nothing wrong with that. And we will continue on down. Let's bring up the EFB. We should see the aircraft at some point appear on this chart. Looks like we might be still a bit far out. Oop. Whack the yoke. Interesting to see how this scores. As per usual, I think I forgot to turn the landing light on takeoff. So I'll get dinged for that, I'm sure. I've left the taxi light on. That's obviously just a little bit of negative reinforcement. We leave all the lights on until we get to 10,000 feet, so I just tend to forget. So particularly what I want to demonstrate here is you can dial in the bottom altitude, 1,800 feet, that final approach fix from whatever you're doing. And As we actually look on the PFD, we see in white ALTV, or altitude. And so it will, once we get to 3,000 feet, it will level us out. So you don't have to step yourself down. I've seen a couple other YouTubers kind of put in each individual altitude. You just don't need to do that on an RNAV approach. I had meant to use Beyond ATC today. Matter of fact, this is the second attempt at flying it. I took off, and it was just, this is an issue. I'm not sure exactly what happens, but I've had multiple attempts now where it just will not recognize I want to take off. I'll ask for I get my clearance, which is great, but then when I ask to take off, it just stalls out, doesn't know what to do. Since it doesn't know I'm trying to take off, it doesn't switch me over to approach. So I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong or how I'm not interfacing with the thing correctly. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I had a subscriber ask recently if I could use Beyond ATC with OnAir, and you absolutely can. It's just which you prefer more, OnAir or Say Intentions. All right, so we're coming up on, looks like about 2 miles from Sugdy. See if, and then as we see now here on our chart, which maybe I'll just leave up for the whole time, we see that we have right there, the aircraft is represented on the chart. So as we get to Sugdy, we should get, there we go, already starting our turn to get us on the heading of 235. Looking over at our PFD, ALTV is flashing in green, letting us know it's going to level us off at 3,000. Vertical path goes back to white. So really, the computer's going to do all the work for us. So these are very easy. Since I haven't changed my power settings, of course, now we can see ourselves slowly starting to descend. And what did I mention? I think it's almost 5 miles from RTAC to, we'll start a descent from 1800. So just before we get to, I think it's about 2 miles out. I think we could probably start now. Let's go ahead and start pulling back our power. Our manifold pressure drop. I don't know, right about 15. Let's see what we get. In the Bonanza, we can put our first notch of flaps in at 154 knots without overspeeding anything. So we will do that now. Look over here and verify. Excellent. Those are in. Bring in a little bit of power. Get that increased drag. We don't need to slow up completely yet. And we have a mile to go. It's already starting that turn. Let's hope we break out. We'll be testing my missed approach procedures. All right, you can see on the chart and on our PFD, we're now just starting to level off on our final approach fix or course of 325. So let's go ahead back to our heading bug in case we have to do a missed approach, and right click, which will sink it straight ahead. And we're just starting to come down now a little bit, so we'll pull out a little bit of power. We still got a ways to go. And yeah, I think we don't need a drop gear yet. Got about 1,500 feet to play with. OnAir's tracking something there with that little beep. All right, we can just see the runway up in the distance there, looks like. My procedure when I'm in the Airbus on something like this, around 2,000 feet or so, I want to be flaps 2, do about 185 knots. At that point, once I hit about 2,000 feet, it will be gear down, which I will do now. All right, we see GP is flashing in green, which that means we're now going to be on the glide path. Put in our second notch of flaps. And now we can dial in, because we're on glide path, 3,000 feet, which is our missed approach altitude. So at this point, if we have to go missed approach, we can just go vertical speed or just start our climb and it'll level us off. All right, so come up on our final approach fix at 1620. It's probably a little bit low or a little bit behind. All right, so I got my second notch of flaps in, coming in around 90 knots. So I gradually bring out a little bit of power. So I want about 80 or so. If we were doing this old school without, once again, if you're using some of the steam gauges, I'd probably want to start a timer to help with situational awareness. Also, I've got the airport in sight, so probably not as important. Looks like there's a bit of rain, just as we can start our landing. A little bit more power. Anyways, I think I was saying, when I'm in the Airbus, around 2,000 feet, I want to be about 185 knots, flaps 2 in. I'll go ahead and drop gear. I'll manage my speed. And then on schedule, I'll put in flaps 3 and 4. And that usually gets me kind of fully configured and stable around 1,500 feet, 1,400 feet. So I got a couple hundred feet to play with in case I get some, if it's very gusty winds out there. It takes a little bit longer. All right, 880 for 380, so 500 feet to go. All right, I don't think we need the chart anymore. No, it's 380.
500. 500. 500.
All right, so airspeed looks perfect, right at 81 knots. And we're at 580 for 380, so 200 feet to go. But if I was definitely flying into IMC or if we're coming right down to minimums, I would absolutely 100% keep my autopilot on to the very last second, or never turn it off, actually. Okay, coming up on 380, I've got the airport in sight. We'll just knock off the autopilot. Right now, the aircraft is nice and trimmed out. Speed's good. Flashing up there, that's for the missed approach. And let's just cut power so we can get back to center line. Go a little bit long here, try to be super smooth.
Landing time logged.
Nice landing. I'm impressed.
As you should be. Alright, there's my collapse. Let's go ahead and bring it right into the ramp. right, if you see that pink plane out there, no, you didn't take a pill in Ibiza. You're not hallucinating. It's part of, I have FSLTL, traffic injector, and it kind of messes up some of the libraries if it doesn't know what it's supposed to do. All right, so here we go. Let's put our parking brake on. See if we can turn off all of our lights but beacon. We'll cut power.
Engine off, time logged. The flight is finished. It has been monitored by OnAir.
Turn the beacon on, and let's go to OnAir and see how we did. All right, that looks good. I got all my bonuses. Okay, and I still need to do the return trip back to Cartagena, which I will do off camera. So in this episode, we kind of went over the big thing I wanted to really demonstrate was the RNAV approach, how to read an approach plate. That approach plate brief is gonna pretty much work. I didn't actually brief it. We'll do some of how I'd actually brief it in real life, but I went over all the elements. That's pretty much gonna work for any type of approach, whether you're making a localizer or ILS, the same kind of basic format what you're looking at. We've done that. So I will make the pending flight. We see there the return trip back to Cartagena on off camera. And I think that's it. So once again, I appreciate everybody's support that I've been getting. Please leave a like, subscribe, comment. I'm thinking probably within the next episode or two, we're going to bring on a AI pilot, and I'm going to get a different aircraft. The only thing that might hold me up is I think I mentioned earlier, I'm heading off to San Juan here in a couple days, and I'm going to be away for about 5 days or so. So I don't want to kind of start anything that I'm not going to be able to kind of complete in terms of hiring an employee. It's going to be very hard for me to log in when I'm away, or rent an aircraft that I'm paying for that I can't actually use. So I think I might make one more episode without it. Maybe we'll do a different type of approach going into Cartagena, maybe the ILS. And having said that, thanks for all the support. I will see you all in the next one. Take care for now. Bye.